talking to the guys about the game, what I talked to the guys about is something I've been trying to do for 6 months. And bear with me here, because it obviously is not easy. Barry and I talked in April. I told him what I was planning on doing. He said, don't decide now. This is not the time. Don't, because he went through it. So I'm figuring I'm one of the luckiest people in a coaching position to know that somebody has gone through the same thing. Also, Tom Davis, who you guys remember, he always said when we would talk about coaching, don't ever make a decision right after the season. In May, after our 99 banquet to put that team into the Hall of Fame down at Platteville, Glenn Gard, his behavior changed. You all know what happened. Everybody knows it's no secret, and every head coach they'd like their top assistant to be the coach. There is no way in the world in June, while Coach Gard was flying around the country to the best cancer people in the country and probably in the world, and trying to figure out how he can do something to help his dad. So therefore, we put that on the back burner, retirement. I talked to Barry after, because we didn't know how long Glenn was going to be with us. As you know, he passed away. Barry and I had been talking. What's a good time? What we came down to was semester. This is semester. We start finals, and I wanted to give Coach Gard plenty of time to get the guys ready and to get them into the position where, as a head coach, he has a chance, as every former head coach for their top assistant says, to take a run at the job. That's the way this business is, and we accept it. Coach Gard will have that chance.
That was head coach Bo Ryan giving his retirement speech following Tuesday's 64-49 win over Texas A&M Corpus Christi, leaving Wisconsin, leaving the nation really stunned at the timing of this announcement. We knew it was coming sooner or later. I think most of us were under the opinion, or I'm sure everyone was under the opinion, that nothing was going to happen till after the season at the very least. Instead, Bo Ryan pulls not quite a Dick Bennett, but gets out midway through the season, basically handing the job off to associate head coach and now interim head coach Greg Gard. Kyle, I don't know, you may be like many others who went to bed after the game got over around 10 o'clock, but what was your reaction when you saw that Ryan was retiring mid-season like this?
Well, I wouldn't say it was necessarily a shock. The timing of it, obviously not the greatest. There was the potential of this happening when the season started, obviously with what had happened and some of the comments that Bo Ryan had made after the season last year, initially retiring, then going back on that statement and coming back to the year. Just a matter of if he was going to make the whole year or not. And semester time was probably not the best moment for him to step aside, considering their mid-season. There's a whole lot of stuff that the team's going through right now, ups and downs. And it was, honestly, it wasn't a shock, but to say that I wasn't surprised, that would be an understatement.
This thing raises a lot of flags for me, and I'm surprised more people aren't talking about these things. For one, we're talking about a legendary head coach here. And now he's all of a sudden gone after a 6-minute press conference, didn't take questions, got up to the stand, started talking about the game for about a minute, and 5 minutes kind of rattled off a retirement speech. And listening to that a couple times, I never heard the words, I'm retiring, I'm stepping down. He didn't use any of that terminology whatsoever. got off the stage, after really just trying to rattle home some points about the timing of this thing and what was going on between him and Barry Alvarez. Again, never used the words "I'm retiring," "This is my last game," anything of that matter. Somebody even had to ask Barry after Bo left the stage to clarify if that's what was going on here. To me, just the disappearance of a legend like this, I'm sure they'll bring him back sometime during the season to honor him or something like that, but I've never heard of a legendary coach quitting mid-season like this, and then he's just gone like that. No, I mean, everybody left the Kohl Center without knowing it was his last game. There was no send-off, nothing like that. At least in Steve Spurrier's case, when he left mid-season, they had a big press conference in his honor. People, got to at least show up, get their questions in, and kind of give it a last hurrah. Here there was nothing for a guy who's an icon of the entire state. To me, it just made no sense, and I've never seen this from a person of his stature.
Very, very strange, and you're right. It was very, very odd. It was oddly done. The way that it was hid from the press and media. There's a reason behind it. Obviously, that they didn't want it to get out before they could make the announcement themselves. But it was very odd, like you said, a guy of his stature, the things that he's done for the program, to not let him go away. Retire with his send off, like you had mentioned, a big to do. When a guy like that, as you mentioned, the stature of himself, the things he's done for the program, everything he's brought to the university, the athletic department, and the state of Wisconsin, for him not to get a true send-off really did raise a lot of red flags to me. There has been some whispers of stuff going on behind the scenes, but it's just something that was very, very strange and definitely had an odd, eerie feeling to it. And something else that I really wanted to comment on was just the way that the press conference was held. It was seemed kind of tasteless in my mind, the way that Bo Ryan handled it. It was almost like a shameless plug for Greg Gard, a shameless plug for Gard to get the job. It was almost like he was really reaching in hopes that Greg Gard would be anointed the next head coach. And to me, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, the way Bo Ryan handled that whole press conference. Just a really, really weird conference in general.
The other part of this is that Bo and Barry both said time and time again, they talked. Bo wanted to retire after the year. Instead, they settled on at semester. And I understand how Greg Gard's father may have played a role in this, and I'm not trying to raise any flags or raise any eyebrows this way, but I was there in July at every major tournament. Greg Gard was there. I mean, so I'm not saying somebody's lying, somebody's not saying anything, but in terms of the duties that Greg Gard was supposedly missing at a key time when his father was battling cancer, I saw Greg Gard at every game. A lot of times right next to Bo Ryan. He was there. I mean, he was doing his job. Now, I'm not saying that that's playing into this at all, but again, am I supposed to believe that Barry Alvarez would prefer that Bo Ryan step away mid-season rather than retire at the end of the season?
Exactly. That makes absolutely no sense, especially when it comes to recruiting, chemistry with the team. What are you supposed to tell a team when you're Greg Gard and he's taken over midway through the season, a season that's been up and down already? Not to mention they've struck out on all their recruiting prospects. How is this going to play out the rest of the year? Essentially it's the same thing. If Bo Ryan were to stay on, and there'd be some flux as to if Bo Ryan was going to stay on. Now none of the recruits really know if Greg Gard's going to stay as well. So it's kind of they're in the same position, just with a less prominent name at the helm. It's just a really, really weird situation. And again, what it comes back to, what I had mentioned is Greg Gard undoubtedly is an outstanding coach. Greg Gard, is he qualified for this job? Yeah, he's qualified. He's a great coach, taking away nothing from Greg Gard. But the shameless plug that Bo Ryan put in for Greg Gard at that press conference was really head-scratching. To me, it's almost better off if he didn't say anything about Greg Gard. He left, he retired, and Greg Gard had the opportunity to prove himself. Essentially, Bo Ryan got ahead of everybody and just plugged Greg Gard as much as he could, kind of out of desperation. It is what it seemed like to me.
And it's also worth noting that Barry and Greg didn't show up till Bo Ryan was practically leaving the stage. They didn't do this thing together. I mean, there's some things here that are just out of whack and not like, the University of Wisconsin to be kind of this mysterious when it comes to a retirement of a polarizing figure. I mean, I think there's going to be more things that come out about this. I don't think this story is over. To me, there's just some things, too many unanswered questions, too many. My eyebrows have been raised really since the day after I had some time to process this, look it over, and kind of just just look for anything that I could find that answered these questions I'm having, and I haven't gotten anywhere. But what's going to happen next is the big question now, and really what I think most people should be focusing on, at least till more information about this saga, I guess you could call, opens up here. Will it be Greg Gard taking this program over? Now, we know Bo Ryan wants Greg Gard. If the rumblings are true, Barry Alvarez doesn't want him to be the next head coach, or at least wants to give a good look to other, or at least wants to put together a national search and make sure he's got the right guy. Do you think Greg Gard deserves a chance to be the next head coach at the University of Wisconsin without any head coaching experience whatsoever? High school, college, he's got nothing. Do you think this should still be the hire Alvarez makes?
I'm not going to go out on a limb and say he should be the hire that Alvarez makes. Does he deserve a shot? Absolutely. The guy's put in his time. Undoubtedly a great coach, outstanding coach. I've had the chance to, be around some clinics, speak with him a few times. He is a great guy. I mean, you won't find a better guy. You won't find a better X's and O's coach. But what it comes down to is all the other stuff. It's the personality, it's the boosters. I mean, essentially, you're running a Fortune 500 company, and you're the CEO, and you've got to take all the shots. So that's the part that we still need to see if Greg Gard is a good fit for the University of Wisconsin. Greg Gard, as I mentioned, knows his stuff. He knows the program. He knows the university. But every university and every program needs a new shot in the arm once in a while. And the University of Wisconsin has had a great run with Bo Ryan and Bo Ryan's staff. But to me, I think it's time to give the university and give the basketball program a shot in the arm, bring in somebody new. I mean, obviously the grass is not always greener, but you always got to almost like hit the refresh button every once in a while. And I think this is a great time, a great opportunity for Barry Alvarez to go out and find a new young head coach with a lot of enthusiasm, a guy that's proven it at the Division I level, being a head coach, that is. I think this is a great time for Barry Alvarez to go out there, get ahead of the game. The position's already open. He can already start making a short list. He probably already has one in his back pocket, and make a great hire for the University of Wisconsin.
A guy I really like for this job is Ben Jacobson at Northern Iowa. I think he's in some ways the equivalent to Bo Ryan at the mid-major level. Never finished lower than 5th in the Missouri Valley, which, as many know, is the toughest mid-major conference in America. Consistent NCAA tournament qualifier from the mid-major, which isn't as easy to do as it is from a high major, even if you're as consistent as he is. Had his team in the top 10 even last year. Made a couple NCAA tournament runs, so he's a guy can produce with less talent, and we all know the challenges of recruiting to Wisconsin. They'll have to do that. Is there a guy that off the top of your head you just think this is who Barry Alvarez should go for?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think Ben Jacobson is an absolute great fit for Wisconsin. The style, play, the type of person they're looking for as a leader within the basketball program. A couple other names, Chris Mack out of Xavier is another name that's popped up and makes some sense. Archie Miller makes some sense. And a Plan B guy that maybe, I don't know if he'd be a solid sell here at the University of Wisconsin, but Greg McDermott out of Creighton is another name that I can definitely see popping in there as a Plan B type of guy. But there's really three guys: Ben Jacobson, Archie Miller, Chris Mack. I don't think you can go wrong with either three of those guys. Tony Bennett is not going to come back to the University of Wisconsin. He's got the $3 million buyout, which, if he wants to come back, that can be done. That can be handled. His salary is actually less than what Bo makes on a yearly basis, so that's really not an issue. But what it comes down to is he really hasn't made it at the University of Virginia, UVA. His wife's from the South. He's got a really good program started there. He can be the don of that program. And again, in the ACC, Coach K and Roy Williams, they're almost done. Their 10 years are almost over, so he could be the guy in the ACC. So I don't see Tony Bennett coming back. And Marshall out of Wichita State, I mean, he's getting paid $3.3 million a year, and Wisconsin's not going to give up that type of money for him. Plus, he turned down Texas, and plus, he could have wrote his own check at Alabama, but did not elect to do that as well.
What do you think is next this season for this team? Obviously, not off to a great start at 7-5. Rebounded on Tuesday in Ryan's last game, although that was one of the ugliest games I think anyone has ever seen from Wisconsin. Can Greg Gard turn this ship around? I mean, you obviously like to have Ryan in these situations. He's done so well with struggling teams. We've seen him, turn teams around even in the middle of Big Ten play. We saw it as early as 2 years ago when that team, I think, lost 4 or 5 in the Big Ten. What year was it? They lost 6 straight, limped into the NCAA tournament, but got there despite a 6-game losing streak. And then, of course, his first season started off, worse than this one. They ended up winning the Big Ten. Is there something Greg Gard can do to turn this thing around, or do you kind of expect, this is going to be a mediocre performance from him and not really going to be indicative of, if he should get the job?
Well, it's going to be tough for him, especially with the crew that the Badgers have. They're a young crew. Bo Ryan didn't really leave him with a whole lot in the cupboard, so to speak. In the Big Ten, I mean, starting out in the Big Ten, 3 of their first 4 games are really tough. You could add 4 out of the first 5. You got Purdue, you got at Indiana, Maryland, and even at Northwestern's a tough game now. Then after that, you got Michigan State. Essentially, every week in the Big Ten is going to be tough, but there aren't any games on the schedule this year like last year where you can just say that's a win. So it's going to be really, really tough for Greg Gard to get this ship turned around and get this team to an NCAA tournament. He's going to have his work cut out for him. Let's see if the players rally around him. Maybe it brings a little spark to the locker room. But really, it's going to be a tough one for him, especially with how tough and how deep the Big Ten is this season.
All right, Kyle, we appreciate your time, and have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, Evan.
I'll give you my opinion here on hoops recruiting, as Kyle was a little binded for time. So to extend the show a little bit, talk a little hoops recruiting. Had a chance to catch up with assistant coach Lamont Paris about how the staff was going to recruit without Bo Ryan leading the charge. Here's a little soundbite from him.
Say the class of 2017 junior would have the opportunity to see what unfolded before them as far as, or alleviate any uncertainty from recruiting who's going to be here. We would be able to make a decision based on that. So, in that class, in the junior class and even younger, we're going to pin our ears back and be as aggressive as we can recruiting. And in 2016, obviously, there would be some level of uncertainty for a recruit coming into this situation. But again, by the time the late signing period was actually took place, we'd hope that we'd have a better idea of, or we'd have some body of work that would be out there that could indicate to a potential recruit, in their own mind anyway, as to where the program could potentially go.
He didn't say it in that particular clip, but interim head coach Greg Gard will not be doing a bulk of the recruiting as he's been doing now that he's in charge of the program. And just to go back earlier in the show, I wasn't trying to ruffle any feathers or anything and imply Greg Gard wasn't tending to his father, as we know he obviously was. But just in terms of his duties, he was around the program in case you had the sense that he wasn't during Ryan's statement. He was at running camps in June and out on the recruiting trail in July. So he was around the program is really all I was trying to say there. But I know Coach Paris and other people have been more optimistic and saying Ryan's retirement is going to help Wisconsin recruiting. It might, but I don't know that anything has changed here. You went from recruits asking when is Coach Ryan going to retire, which could have been 3 or 4 years from now, to who's going to be the head coach next year. In the first scenario, with Ryan around, recruits at least could have been somewhat optimistic that they'd have a couple years under the legend, and then would obviously hope that Greg Gard gets the job. Under this scenario, recruits are have to be, say that there's a 50% chance at best that Gard gets this job. I don't know that I understand that one more question is answered, but it's the same question that's still looming around recruiting, and it's going to be very tough for Wisconsin to fill out this 2016 class with the 2 scholarships they have and get 2 quality players who have other options. Now, you could get guys without options, with mid-major options, or very poor high-major offers, for lack of a better word there. But to recruit without a head coach, which is what they're still essentially doing because athletic director Barry Alvarez won't commit to Greg Gard, and I don't even know that he can anyway by the Wisconsin law that says this job has to be posted for 2 weeks. It's hard to get somebody to jump on this ship when they don't know who the captain is. It just is. Now, I think the good news for Wisconsin is I don't think there's a ton of good options, particularly at point guard, where they need somebody. I don't know if they can afford to not take a point guard in this class, but I don't love any of the options out there. The one guy I think could be worthy of a scholarship is Kobe Gantz out of Pennsylvania, who came to camp, did really well. And even though he's recruited by Gard and Ryan primarily, he's a guy you could still get. The tradition itself is enough to beat out his offer list. And he's kind of in that middle ground between a mid-major and a high major, but his upside is very high, where I think he's worth taking a chance on, and I think he's significantly better than the other guys they're looking at point guard right now. For Wisconsin, you have to hope for 2 things. A, you find a super sleeper or 2, that a late developer, kind of like a Khalil Iverson, that's not playing his best ball until he gets to college and starts developing as a senior. And a couple of those guys are always out there, and Wisconsin has always seemed to find them. That could be a big deal. Another thing you have to take into consideration is coaching changes. Now, even though a lot of people are committed and signed, 90% of the high major prospects, if not more, coaching changes are going to open up a lot of things here in April and May that Wisconsin has to be ready to pounce on. Even if they're signed, a recruit can get out of that with a coaching change. So I think if it's the right fit, Wisconsin has to be ready to pounce on somebody wherever that prospect may be located. I think you have to keep your eyes open for that, because it's very, very important that they get a point guard, and one that can play early, because right now, as we all know, they only have the one true point guard in Bronson Koenig. I don't think you want to go into his senior year and not know who the future is going to be in terms of who's running the show at point guard. I think that's almost a nightmare scenario, especially when you talk about how well Wisconsin has done with point guards over the years. Always under Ryan, have almost always seemed to have a all Big Ten performer there. It's almost like Wisconsin running back recruiting right now, for some reason, struggling despite having such a strong tradition at the position. But it'll be interesting to see. I'm not very optimistic here. I think if they get 1 or 2 good kids, I think celebrate that. That's a huge win for the program, because it's going to be tough. I don't think much has changed with Ryan's retirement. I think the questions are still there. Wisconsin's not going to be able to promise these recruits anything. And that's tough to go ask a 17, 18-year-old and his family to make a blind decision and hope that guard gets the job, or be okay with someone taking care of their son who they have no idea who he is. I'll wrap up the show right there. You can follow me on Twitter at Evan_Flood or at Badger247. The site is wisconsin.247sports.com. Free 7-day trial if your thirst for Wisconsin athletics exceeds this and some of the other free stuff we provide. We'll be back with more shows later in the week. I know I keep promising recruiting interviews. I got to come through for that. I've been slacking lately. This Bo Ryan retirement thing caught me off guard, messed up my whole week. So write a letter to him if you have problems. It's his fault. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you guys next week.